I am standing in front of the altar at the most elegant church in the city, watching my only son about to get married, when the mother of the bride stands up from her seat, points her finger at me, and shouts loud enough for everyone to hear. "That is not a father, that is a disaster in a suit." The bride laughs. Some people turn around looking uncomfortable, but my son does not laugh. He stands motionless for a second, processing what just happened. Then, with a calmness that freezes my blood, he takes the microphone off his lapel, turns to the bride, and says, "It is over." He cancels the wedding, right there in the act. The entire room freezes. Not a sigh, not a movement, just silence. But what my son did the next morning not only destroyed that family, it also destroyed mine. Before I tell you how we got to that point, I need you to help me with something. Leave me a comment and tell me what city or state you are listening from. I would like to know who is on the other side of this story, because what I am about to tell you is not fiction, it is my life. And maybe somewhere out there, someone is going through something similar. My name is Arthur. I am 62 years old. I was born and raised in Chicago in a working-class family that never had much, but always had dignity. My father was a technician in a textile factory. My mother was a seamstress. I learned from a very young age that money does not come alone. You have to work for it with your hands, with your mind, and with your soul. At 18, I started working as a helper in a freight transport company. By 25, I was a supervisor. By 35, a minority partner. And at 50, I was the owner of 3 of the most important logistics routes in the country. I am not a billionaire, but I have enough to live well, very well. A house in the affluent suburbs, a condo in Florida, real estate investments, solid savings accounts, and a company that, although I no longer manage day to day, continues to generate constant income. I retired 4 years ago. I decided it was time to enjoy what I had built. My wife, Grace, died 7 years ago from a heart problem that no one saw coming. It was fast, painful, devastating. But life goes on even if one does not want it to, and I was left with the most valuable thing we had together, our son Michael. Michael is 34 years old. He is an architect. He studied at a top university. He is intelligent, responsible, hardworking. Since Grace died, we became closer. I was always a present father, but after losing her, Michael and I became a team. We had dinner together on Sundays. We talked about business, about life, about his projects. I never had complaints about him. He never gave me a hard time. He was in every sense a good son. 2 years ago, Michael met a woman named Emily. He met her at a corporate event. She worked in public relations for a luxury firm. She was pretty self-assured with that air of someone used to move in wealthy circles. From the beginning, she seemed intense to me. Michael was fascinated. I tried to stay neutral. I did not want to be the typical father who has an opinion on everything, but something about her did not sit right with me. It was not just a feeling, it was something in her way of speaking. She always mentioned what she had, what she knew, who she knew. Every conversation with her ended up being a catalog of her perfect life. And the strangest thing was that she always asked questions about me, about my properties, about my investments, about my plans for the company. "Arthur," she would tell me with that bright smile, "you must have a very clear strategy for when you decide to inherit everything right, because with what you have built, I imagine you already have everything planned." The first time she said it, I took it as curiosity. The second time as boldness. The third time as a red flag. But Michael was in love, and when a man is in love, he is blind deaf, immune to any warning. A year after meeting, Michael announced they were getting married. He told me at a dinner, the 3 of us together in a high-end restaurant downtown. Emily smiled as if she had just won something. I congratulated my son, I gave him a hug, I told him I supported him. But inside, something turned in my stomach. That same night when I returned home, I poured myself a whiskey and sat in the living room looking at the photo of Grace that I still keep on the mantel. "I do not know what to do," I said in a low voice as if she could hear me. "Oh, I do not know if I am being paranoid or if there really is something bad here. There was no answer there, never is, but silence sometimes says more than words. From that moment on, everything started to change. Emily began to visit me more often. At first, she always came with Michael, then she started coming alone. "I want to know you better, Arthur," she told me. "You are important to Michael, and I want us to be close." It seemed innocent, even tender, but every visit came with questions. "Have you decided what you are going to do with the Florida condo? Are the transport routes still in your name, or have you transferred them? Michael told me you have a big insurance policy. Is that true?" I responded with evasions, with uncomfortable smiles, with changes of subject. But she insisted, always with sweetness, always with that mask of genuine interest. One day, 2 months before the wedding, Emily arrived at my house with her mother. Her name was Linda. A woman of about 55, thin, with the face of someone who has lived between beauty salons and private clubs. She wore sunglasses indoors and smelled of expensive perfume and disdain. "Arthur," she said to me as she sat in my living room without being invited, "we need to talk about our children's future." I remained standing, holding a cup of coffee. "The future, yes," she said, crossing her legs with an almost rehearsed gesture. "Emily and Michael are going to form a family, and in families one must be clear about expectations, about responsibilities, about inheritances." My blood froze. "Excuse me?" Linda smiled. It was a cold, calculated smile. "Do not misunderstand me. We are not asking for anything. We just want to ensure everything is in order. You are an older man, Arthur, and although you look healthy, one never knows what can happen. It would be prudent for Michael to know what corresponds to him to avoid legal problems later." Emily, sitting next to her, nodded as if what her mother was saying was the most reasonable thing in the world. I put the cup on the table with more force than I intended. "Michael already knows what corresponds to him when the time comes, but that time is not now, and it is definitely not something I'm going to discuss with you." Linda raised an eyebrow. "You do not have to get defensive, Arthur. We are only looking out for our daughter's interests." "And I am looking out for mine," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have things to do." They left, but the poison was already planted. That night I called Michael. I told him what had happened. I expected him to get upset, to take my side, to see what I was seeing. But no, he laughed. "Dad, they are nervous about the wedding. Emily's mom is intense, I know, but she is not a bad person. She just wants the best for her daughter. Michael, they were asking about my will, about my properties, as if I were already dead. You're exaggerating." "I am not exaggerating. Something is not right." "Dad," he said with a tone that hurt me more than I expected, "I think you are being unfair. Emily loves you. Her family respects you. Do not ruin this out of paranoia." He hung up. I sat in the armchair with the phone in my hand, feeling something break between us. But I was not going to stay still. The next morning I hired a private investigator, a discreet professional guy I had been recommended years ago when I had problems with a disloyal partner. I gave him a single assignment: find out everything he could about Emily and her family. "What am I looking for specifically?" he asked me. "Debts, lawsuits, criminal records, anything that does not add up. And if I do not find anything, then I was wrong. But if you find something, I need to know before my son gets married." The investigator nodded. "I will have results for you in 2 weeks." It was not 2 weeks. It was 1. He called me on a Thursday afternoon. "Arthur, I need to see you. In person. Now." We met at a coffee shop downtown. The guy arrived with a thick folder. He put it on the table carefully, as if it were a grenade about to explode. "What did you find?" I asked. "More than you expected," he said. He opened the folder. Inside were documents, social media printouts, public records. Emily has 3 civil lawsuits pending, 2 for fraud in employment contracts, 1 for misappropriation of funds in her former company. My breath caught. And her mother, Linda, has a longer history. 2 divorces. In both cases, she sued her ex-husbands for excessive alimony. One of them countersued her for extortion. He won, she had to pay. She also has debts with 3 banks. One of them is in the process of foreclosure. I felt the coffee shop spinning. And does Michael know any of this? The investigator shook his head. I do not think so. But there is more. He pulled out a printed sheet. It was a WhatsApp conversation. I managed to access this through a contact. It is a conversation between Emily and Linda from 3 weeks ago. I read, Emily, almost there, Mom. The wedding is in 2 months. Linda, and did the old man sign anything yet, Emily? Not yet. But Michael is going to pressure him. I told him his dad should put everything in his name before the wedding for security. Linda, good. Once they are married, everything is community property. And if the old man resists, we already know what to do. Emily, are you sure it will work? Linda, it worked with your stepfather. It will work with this one. The paper fell from my hands. There is more, said the investigator, but I think this is enough. I left that coffee shop feeling like I'd been hollowed out inside. It was not paranoia. I was not exaggerating. My son was about to marry a woman who only wanted my money, and worse, they had a plan to get it. That night, I did not sleep. I stayed awake thinking about how to tell Michael how to show him the truth, without him hating me, how to protect him without losing him. But in the end, I did not have to do anything because on the day of the wedding, everything exploded on its own. The morning of the wedding dawned perfect, too perfect. The sky was clear, the sun shone with that golden intensity. The church was decorated as if it were a royal wedding. White flowers everywhere, huge candles in every corner, silk ribbons hanging from the pews. Everything coordinated to the millimeter by a wedding planner who I am sure charged more than my father earned in his entire life. I arrived early. I put on the suit I had made especially for the occasion. Oxford gray Italian cut. I looked in the mirror before leaving the house and thought Grace would be proud. Then I remembered what was about to happen, and the pride turned into a knot in my stomach. Because I carried with me the investigator's folder. Not all of it, just the most important pages. The WhatsApp conversations, the lawsuit documents, the proof of Linda's debts. I had put it all in a manila envelope that I kept in the car under the driver's seat. My plan was simple. Wait for the right moment, take Michael aside, and show him the truth. Before he said, I do, before it was too late. But things did not go as planned. When I arrived at the church, Emily was already there in one of the private rooms brides use to get ready. I saw her from afar, surrounded by her bridesmaids, all laughing, taking photos, toasting with champagne. It seemed like a scene out of a movie. Perfect, pristine, fake. Linda was with her, supervising every detail with the precision of a general before battle. She wore an ivory dress that honestly seemed to compete with her own daughters. Too elegant, too flashy, as if she were the protagonist. She saw me and smiled. That smile I already knew, the one that said, we almost won. I did not return the smile. I just nodded and kept walking toward where Michael was. I found him in another room, smaller, surrounded by his friends. He was nervous, it showed. He adjusted his tie every 2 minutes, ran his hand through his hair, laughed too loud at jokes that were not funny. I knew him well. Those were his tics when he was under pressure. I approached and put a hand on his shoulder. How are you, son? He turned and hugged me. It was a strong, sincere, nervous hug. Dad. But good. Very good. Are you sure? Yes. Why? I looked him in the eyes. I wanted to tell him everything right there. I wanted to take the envelope out of the car, put it in front of him and scream, Open your eyes, that woman is using you. But his friends were around. The organ music was already playing in the church. The guests were starting to arrive. Nothing, I said finally. I just want you to know that I love you, and that I will always be on your side. Michael smiled. I know, Dad. I know. We left the room together. The groomsmen started to line up. The wedding coordinator ran from one side to another with a tablet in her hand, giving orders, as if she were directing a military operation. Everything had to go perfectly. Everything had to look impeccable. I sat in the first row on the groom's side alone. Grace would have been sitting next to me, but her place was empty as it had been for 7 years. The music changed. The wedding march began to play. Everyone stood up. The church doors opened and Emily appeared on the arm of her father, an older man in a navy blue suit with the face of someone who has learned to stay quiet to survive. He did not smile, he just walked like a man serving a sentence. Emily, on the other hand, shone. The dress was spectacular, strapless with crystals on the bodice and endless train. The veil covered her face, but you could see her smile, that smile of triumph. Linda was sitting across the aisle in the first row on the bride's side. She held a handkerchief in her hand, supposedly to wipe away tears of emotion. But I saw her. She was not crying. She was calculating, looking at everything, at everyone, and when her eyes met mine, she held my gaze. It was a silent duel, a war without words. The ceremony began. The priest spoke about love, about commitment, about the eternal union of two souls. Pretty words empty because I knew none of that was real. The moment for vows arrived. Michael spoke first. He said beautiful things about Emily, about how she made him a better person, about how he could not imagine his life without her. I had to clench my fists not to stand up and stop everything right there. Then it was Emily's turn. She pulled a folded paper from her bouquet. "Michael," she began with a trembling voice, "from the day I met you, I knew you were special. Not only for who you are, but for what you represent, for the family you have, for the legacy you carry." My skin crawled. "I know your dad is an important man, a man who has built a lot, and I promise to take care of you, of him, and of everything you have built together." People sighed. It seemed tender to them, emotional, but I heard every word for what it was, a declaration of intent, a public announcement of what was coming. The priest continued, "If anyone has any reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now, or forever hold your peace." Absolute silence. I looked at Michael, then at Emily, then at the envelope I had left in the car. But I stayed quiet. The priest smiled. "Then by the power vested in me—" "Wait," the voice came from the back. Everyone turned. It was a man of about 40 in a dark suit, standing next to the last row of benches. I did not recognize him immediately, but something in his face seemed familiar. "Who are you?" asked the priest, clearly uncomfortable. "I am Robert Mendoza, Linda's ex-husband." A murmur ran through the church like a fire. Linda went pale. She stood up. "You have no business being here." "I have every right to be here," Robert said calmly. He pulled a paper from his jacket. "Especially when I have a court order that prevents Linda from approaching any assets related to new marriages until she settles her debts with me." The priest seemed lost. "I do not understand." "It is simple," Robert said, walking to the front. "Linda has a pattern. She marries her daughter to wealthy men, manipulates the situation, accesses the assets, and when there is nothing left to take, she disappears. She did it to me, she tried it with 2 others, and now she is doing it here." Michael turned to Emily. "What is he saying?" Emily shook her head, her eyes full of tears. "It is a lie. He is crazy." But Linda was already backing toward the side door. It was then that I stood up. I took out my phone. I had the WhatsApp conversations saved as photos. I projected them on my screen and walked toward the altar. "Michael," I said with a firm voice, "you need to see this." My son looked at me confused, then looked at the screen. He started reading and his face changed. His jaw clenched. His eyes became glassy. His hands trembled. "What is this?" he asked, looking at Emily. "Michael, I can explain—" "What is this?" he shouted. The entire church froze. Emily began to cry. "It is not what it looks like." "Almost there, Mom. The wedding is in 2 months." Michael read out loud. "Did the old man sign something yet? Once they are married, everything is community property." He turned to me. "Is this real?" "Yes." Michael took a step back. He took off the microphone pinned to his suit. He breathed deeply, and then with a voice so cold it gave me chills. He said, "It is over." Emily reached out to him. "No, please, we can talk." "There is nothing to talk about. Get out." But he was already walking toward the exit. The guests began to murmur. Some stood up. Others took out their phones to record. Linda tried to stop him. "This is a mistake. Your father is manipulating everything." Michael stopped in front of her. He looked her straight in the eye. "You," he said with contempt, "never come near me or my family again." And he left the church. I followed him. Outside, Michael was leaning against his car with his hands on his head. He was breathing heavily, shaking. I approached slowly. "Son, why didn't you tell me before?" he yelled at me. "I tried. You didn't listen. You should have insisted. You should have forced me to see." "I cannot force you to do anything, Michael. You are a grown man. I could only give you the tools to see the truth." He covered his face with his hands. "I'm an idiot." "No. You were a man in love, and that makes you human. I was going to marry a scammer. I know. She was going to rob me. You, me, everyone. I know." He dropped to the ground, sitting against the car tire. I sat next to him. I said nothing. I was just there as always. After a few minutes, Michael spoke. "What do I do now?" "Now we go home. And tomorrow we think with a cool head. And she is no longer your problem." We got in the car and left. We left behind the church, the confused guests, the white flowers, and the disaster that remained of what was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. But the nightmare was just beginning, because the next morning Michael did something I never expected. That night, we slept little. Michael stayed at my house. He did not want to be alone. We sat in the living room, drinking whiskey in silence, watching the news without really paying attention. Near 3:00 a.m., Michael spoke. "Dad, I need you to tell me the truth. Is there anything else you haven't told me?" I told him everything. The lawsuits against Emily Linda's debts, the history of ex-husbands, the fraudulent divorces, everything. Michael listened in silence. When I finished, he stared into space for several minutes. "I'm going to destroy them," he said finally. "What?" "I'm going to destroy them. Her mother, that whole family of vipers." "Michael, I understand you are angry, but—" "I'm not angry, Dad. I am decided." He got up from the armchair. "They were going to rob me. They were going to use me. They were going to destroy everything you built, everything Mom and you dreamed for me, and I am not going to let them get away with it." "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done from the beginning. Investigate, gather evidence, and press charges." I stood up too. "Son, that can take months, years." "Are you sure you want to get into that?" "Absolutely." And he was not joking. The next morning, Michael hired the same private investigator I had used. But he did not stop there. He also hired a team of lawyers, specializing in civil and criminal fraud. 3 of them the best in the city. "I want you to find everything," he told them in a meeting we had in an office downtown. "Every document, every suspicious transaction, every fraudulent contract, every lie, everything." The lawyers looked at each other. The oldest of them, a gray-haired man named Mr. Duran, cleared his throat. "Mr. Michael, this can open up to other investigations. If we find something serious, the prosecutor's office could get involved. Are you prepared for that?" "Absolutely. And if this reaches the media better, I want the whole world to know who they are." I watched my son, and I did not recognize him. It was not irrational revenge. It was something much colder, more calculated, more dangerous. Over the next 2 weeks, the team of lawyers and investigators worked non-stop. And what they found was worse than any of us imagined. Emily did not just have 3 civil lawsuits. She had 7. 4 of them for corporate fraud, 2 for forgery of documents, 1 for misappropriation of funds from a nonprofit organization where she had worked as a volunteer. She had stolen donations intended for children with cancer. When Michael read that, he turned pale. "She stole money from sick children." "That is correct," said the investigator. "And then she used part of that money to pay personal debts." Michael closed his eyes. "Continue." Linda's history was even worse. There were not just 2 divorces, there were 4. Each one ended with lawsuits for extortion or marital fraud. In one of the cases, the ex-husband had lost his entire business because Linda had manipulated the community property documents and kept everything. "And what did he do?" asked Michael. "He declared bankruptcy. He had to sell his house. And 5 years ago, he tried to take his own life." Michael clenched his fists. "Did he survive?" "Yes, but he never fully recovered. Now he lives in a small apartment in a bad neighborhood. He works as a rideshare driver." The room went silent. "I want to talk to him," said Michael. "With whom?" "With that man. With Linda's ex-husband. I want to know exactly what they did to him." 2 days later, we went to see him. The man's name was Fernando. He lived in an old building in a 3rd-floor apartment. When he opened the door, he looked like a destroyed version of what he once was. Thin, dark circles under his eyes, premature gray hair, and a sadness in his eyes that was felt to the soul. "Michael," he asked with a tired voice. "Yes, come in." The apartment was small but clean. A living room with an old armchair, a plastic table, an old tube television. On the walls there were no photos, no memories. It was like living in an empty space. We sat down. Fernando offered us coffee. Michael accepted out of courtesy. I just watched. "I heard what happened at your wedding," Fernando said. "It came out on social media. A friend sent me the video." "Is there video?" asked Michael, surprised. "Everyone recorded. It already has more than 200,000 views." Michael closed his eyes. "I'm sorry," Fernando said. "I should not have said that. No, it is okay. I want to know what awaits me." Fernando took a sip of his coffee. "What do you want me to tell you?" "Everything. How did you meet Linda? How did it start? How did it end?" Fernando took a deep breath and began to tell his story. "I met Linda at an art exhibition. I had a furniture import business. I was doing well, very well. I had just bought a house in the suburbs. I had 3 stores expansion plans. Linda came into my life like a hurricane. She was beautiful, intelligent, knew exactly what to say. She made me feel special. She made me feel like I was the most important man in the world." He paused. His voice cracked. "We got married 6 months later, and everything changed. She started asking me to put her name on the business accounts. 'To protect it,' she said, 'in case something happens to you.' I trusted her. I signed. And 2 years later, when I wanted a divorce because I discovered she was cheating on me with another man, she already had control of everything. How? She had forged contracts. She had manipulated and notarized documents. She had an accomplice lawyer. By the time I realized I owned nothing. Everything was in her name. The stores, the house, the bank accounts, everything." Michael looked at him with horror. "I tried to fight in court," Fernando continued. "I spent everything I had left on lawyers. But she had more resources, more connections, more experience. In the end, I lost. I lost everything, including my dignity." "And Emily?" asked Michael. "Did she know?" Fernando nodded. "Emily was an accomplice from the beginning. She was the one who investigated the men, the one who looked for victims. Linda taught her everything. It is a family business." My stomach turned. "Why didn't you report them?" I asked. Fernando looked at me with tired eyes. "I tried, but I did not have enough evidence, and they had lawyers who knew how to manipulate the system. Besides, when a man denounces a woman for marital fraud, no one believes you. They see you as the loser, like the weak man who let himself be manipulated. You become the joke." Michael stood up. He walked to the window. He stayed there, looking out, processing everything he had just heard. "I'm not going to be another joke," he said finally. Fernando looked at him. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to do what you couldn't. I'm going to destroy them, legally, with evidence, with witnesses, with whatever it takes." "Are you sure? Because they are not going to stay quiet. They are going to fight. They are going to lie. They are going to destroy you if they can." Michael turned around. "Let them try." We left that apartment with a new ally. Fernando agreed to testify. He agreed to share all the documents he still had saved. He agreed to testify against Linda and Emily, and he was not the only one. In the following weeks, Michael's legal team located 3 other men who had been victims of the same operation, all with similar stories, all destroyed economically and emotionally, all willing to talk. With each testimony, the case became stronger, and Michael became more relentless. But I was beginning to worry, not for the evidence nor for the case, but for my son, because I was watching him transform into someone I did not know. Someone consumed by the thirst for justice or revenge. I no longer knew which of the two. One night, while we were having dinner at my house, I asked him, "Michael, are you okay?" "Perfectly." "You don't seem like it." "I'm doing the right thing, Dad." "I know, but I worry about what this is doing to you." "What is it doing to me?" "It is consuming you." Michael put the silverware on the table. "Would you prefer I let them go, that they continue destroying lives?" "No, but I do not want this to destroy you either. It is not going to destroy me. It is going to liberate me." I said nothing more, but inside I knew things were about to get much worse, because 3 days later we received a call from Mr. Duran. "I need you to come to my office, now." "What happened?" asked Michael. "Emily and Linda filed a countersuit, and it is complicated." We arrived at the office in less than an hour. Mr. Duran was waiting for us with a worried face. On his desk was a thick document. "What is that?" asked Michael. "A lawsuit for defamation, moral damage, and harassment. Emily and Linda are alleging that you, your father, and our team are carrying out a smear campaign against them. They are asking for $500,000 in damages." Michael laughed. It was a dry laugh without humor. "Seriously?" "No, completely serious, and there is more." The lawyer passed a sheet. "They are also alleging that your father manipulated evidence that the private investigator you hired violated their privacy, and that the WhatsApp conversations you presented at the church were obtained illegally." I stood up from the chair. "That is ridiculous." "It may be ridiculous, Arthur, but it is what they are alleging, and we have to respond." Michael stayed quiet. Then he smiled. It was a smile that scared me. "Perfect," he said. "Perfect?" asked the lawyer. "Yes, because if they want a legal fight, we are going to give them the fight of their lives." And so the war began. The legal war that broke out in the following months was like nothing I had ever experienced before, and I had been through labor lawsuits problems with disloyal partners and aggressive tax audits. But this was different. This was personal. This was brutal. Emily and Linda hired one of the most expensive firms in the city, lawyers who charged hundreds of dollars an hour and had a reputation for winning impossible cases. Their strategy was simple. First attack hard, and sink us into a war of attrition until we surrendered from exhaustion or lack of resources. But they made a mistake, a fundamental mistake. They assumed that Michael and I were going to get tired, that we were going to back down, that we were going to negotiate. They did not know my son, and they definitely did not know me. The first hearing was in a civil court downtown, a gray old building with hallways that smelled of humidity and yellowed paper. We arrived early. Michael wore a black suit, white shirt, navy blue tie. He looked like an executive in a board meeting, but his eyes had something different, something cold, something determined. Emily and Linda arrived 15 minutes later, both dressed conservatively. Emily with a gray suit, without excessive makeup hair, tied in a simple ponytail. Linda with a black dress to the knee dark glasses that she did not take off until entering the room. They came accompanied by 3 lawyers, 2 middle-aged men with leather briefcases, and a young woman with a tablet in her hand. When Emily saw me, she looked away, but Linda held my gaze with that expression of contempt I already knew, as if I were guilty of everything, as if I had ruined their perfect plans. The hearing was technical. The judge, a man of about 60 with a white mustache, and a face of having seen too many lies in his life, reviewed the documents presented by both parties. He listened to the preliminary arguments and in the end, after 2 hours, declared that the case would continue. "There are sufficient elements to proceed," he said with a tired voice. "Both parties will present their complete evidence at the next hearing, scheduled for 4 weeks from now." We left the court, and Michael was tense. 4 more weeks! "It is the process, son. You have to have patience." "I do not have patience. I want this to end now." "I know, but it has to be done right." That same afternoon, the investigation team presented us with new material. They had found something big, something that changed everything. We met at Mr. Duran's offices. On the table was a laptop and a series of printed documents. The investigator, a thin man of about 40 named Javier, explained to us with a professional voice. We found bank transfers from Emily's personal accounts to offshore accounts in Panama. In the last 3 years, she has moved more than $400,000. Michael leaned over the table. 400,000? That is correct, and there is no tax declaration for that money, which means it is money laundering or tax evasion, probably both. And Linda, Javier switched to another screen. Linda has accounts in the Cayman Islands. We have tracked movements for more than $1 million in the last 10 years. All proceeds from her previous divorces, all undeclared. Mr. Duran adjusted his glasses. This is no longer just civil fraud. This is a federal crime. We can present this to the prosecutor's office. Michael leaned back in the chair. What happens if we do? If we do, this stops being a civil lawsuit and becomes a criminal investigation. The authorities would take the case. They could face charges for money laundering, tax evasion, and fraud. The sentences can be from 5 to 15 years in prison. I looked at my son. "Are you sure you want to go that far?" Michael did not hesitate for a second. "Completely sure." "Son, once we open that door, there is no turning back. This is going to get very ugly." "It is already ugly, Dad. We are just making the truth come to light." 2 days later, we filed a formal complaint with the federal prosecutor's office. The case was assigned to the Financial Crimes Unit, and things accelerated. The prosecution requested access to all of Emily and Linda's bank accounts. They also asked for phone records, emails, and tax documents from the last 10 years. It was like opening Pandora's box. Each document revealed more lies, more fraud, more victims. They discovered that Linda had used fake identities in some of her previous marriages, that she had forged signatures on notarized contracts, that she had at least 2 open investigations in other states that had never been completed due to lack of evidence, and Emily was no better. In addition to the civil lawsuits we already knew about, the prosecution found she had participated in a real estate fraud scheme. She had sold properties that did not exist to foreign investors. The total amount of the fraud was more than $750,000. When the prosecutor in charge of the case presented us with all the information in a private meeting, even I was speechless. "This is a criminal organization," said the prosecutor, a serious man of about 50. "They are not 2 opportunistic women. It is a structured operation with years of experience, with victims in several states." "How many victims?" asked Michael. "So far, we have identified 14, but surely there are more." 14 men, 14 destroyed families, 14 ruined lives. The prosecutor continued. "We are going to request arrest warrants, but we need you to continue collaborating. We need you to keep the pressure on, and we need you to be prepared for what is coming." "What is coming?" I asked. "They are going to try to flee, or they are going to try to negotiate, or in the worst case, they are going to try to intimidate you." "They cannot intimidate me," said Michael with that cold voice that already worried me. "Do not underestimate what they can do when they feel cornered, Mr. Michael. People like that are capable of anything." And he was right. A week later, the threats began. The first was subtle. An anonymous call to my house at 2:00 a.m. A voice distorted electronically saying, "Withdraw the complaint. or you will regret the consequences." I hung up and immediately called Javier the investigator. "I need you to trace this call." "We are already doing it, but they use technology to hide the origin. It will take time." The second threat was more direct. Michael received an envelope in his office. Inside were photos of his car, his building, the places he frequented, and a handwritten note. "We know where you live. We know where you go. Back off while you can." Michael took the envelope directly to the prosecutor's office. They opened an investigation for intimidation and threats, but could not trace who had sent it. The third threat was against me. One morning when I left my house to go to the gym, I found my car tires slashed, all four, and on the windshield painted with red spray paint. "Last warning." I called the police. They filed a report, took photos, but said the same thing as always. Without witnesses or cameras, it is difficult to proceed. That night, Michael and I sat in my living room. We both had a whiskey in hand. We were both tired. "This is getting out of control," I said. "I know. We can stop. We can withdraw the complaint. Move. Start over somewhere else." Michael looked at me as if I had said the biggest blasphemy in the world. "Are you serious?" "I'm talking about protecting you. About protecting us. I'm not going to run Dad. I'm not going to give them that satisfaction. It is not running. It is being smart." "No." He got up from the armchair. "This ends when they are in prison, not before." I tried to reason with him, but it was useless. Michael was obsessed, and honestly, I no longer knew if what I felt was pride or fear. The following days were tense. I hired private security for my house. Michael did the same for his apartment. We also installed surveillance cameras and alarm systems connected directly to an immediate response company. But the threats did not stop. Anonymous emails started arriving, messages on social media calls at odd hours, all designed to exhaust us, to break us psychologically. Until one night, everything exploded. It was Friday near 11:00 p.m. I was at my house watching television when the doorbell rang. It seemed strange to me. I was not expecting anyone, and at that hour no one came without warning. I approached the intercom. "Who is it?" "Urgent parcel service." I did not order any package. "It is from the prosecutor's office. You need to sign it personally." Something did not sit right with me. I checked the security cameras from my phone. There was a man at the door dressed in a courier uniform holding a manila envelope. He looked legitimate, but there was something about his posture, the way he looked, sideways, how he held the envelope with too much force. I did not open the door. Instead, I called the security company. "There is someone at my door claiming to be a courier. Can you verify?" "Right away, Arthur." While I waited, the man knocked again, more insistent. "Mr. Arthur, I need you to sign this." "Leave the package there. I will pick it up later." "I cannot. I need the signature." "Then wait for my security team to arrive." The man went silent. Then instead of waiting, he dropped the envelope on the ground and ran toward a car that was parked on the corner. The car sped off. 5 minutes later, the security team arrived. With them came a police unit they had called as backup. They checked the envelope carefully. They used a portable scanner, and what they found froze my blood. "Arthur," said the officer in charge, "this is not a document. It is an incendiary device." "What?" "A homemade bomb. Not very sophisticated, but sufficient to cause serious damage. If you had opened the envelope, it would have activated." I had to sit down. My legs did not respond. I called Michael immediately. "Son, they tried to kill me." Michael arrived at my house in less than 20 minutes. He was pale, upset. The police were still there, taking statements, reviewing evidence. "Are you okay?" he asked, hugging me tightly. "Yes, but this is no longer a game, Michael. They tried to kill me." "I know." "Then you know we have to stop." "We are not going to stop." His voice was firm, too firm. "We are going to finish this." The prosecutor was notified that same night. The next morning, he issued immediate arrest warrants against Emily and Linda for attempted murder in addition to all previous charges. The police looked for them at their house. They were not there. Not at their jobs, not with relatives. They had disappeared. "They fled," said the prosecutor on a conference call. but they cannot go very far. We already alerted immigration. We have their photos at all airports and bus stations." "And in the meantime," asked Michael, "in the meantime, you stay in safe places. Do not go out alone. Do not open doors to strangers and report any suspicious activity." 3 days passed. 3 days of tension, of waiting, of not knowing if at any moment we would receive another threat, another attack. Until Tuesday morning, we received the call. "We have them," said the prosecutor. "Where?" "In a hotel near the border. They were trying to cross with fake documents. They were detained at the immigration checkpoint." "Bah!" Michael closed his eyes and breathed deeply. "When are they bringing them back?" "Tomorrow. They will be in the detention center while awaiting trial." And so it was. The next day, Emily and Linda were transferred back to Chicago. The images of their arrival at the airport went viral, the two handcuffed in prison uniforms walking escorted by federal agents. Emily was crying. Linda kept her head high with that arrogance that characterized her. Michael and I watched the images on television. My son said nothing, just watched, with that expression I could no longer decipher. "How do you feel?" I asked him. "Empty." "Empty." "Yes. I thought I would feel satisfied, victorious. But I just feel empty." I put a hand on his shoulder. "It is normal, son. You have been in survival mode for months. Now that it ended, your body and your mind need to process everything." "When does the processing end?" "I do not know. Everyone has their time." The trial began 2 months later. It was a long, exhausting process full of heartbreaking testimonies. The 14 men who had been victims of Emily and Linda testified. Some cried, others could barely speak. All told similar stories. Stories of manipulation, of fraud, of destroyed lives. Fernando, Linda's ex-husband, was one of the most impactful witnesses. He spoke for almost 2 hours. He explained in detail how Linda had seduced him, how she had gained his trust, how she had taken control of his business, and how finally she had left him in ruin. "She took everything from me," he said with a broken voice. "My company, my house, my dignity. She left me with nothing, and when I tried to defend myself, she destroyed me in court. She made me look like the bad guy in the story." The room was silent. Even the judge seemed moved. When it was Michael's turn to testify, he did so with a chilling calm. He explained how he had met Emily, how she had started asking questions about my wealth, how her mother had gotten involved, how he discovered the WhatsApp conversations, and finally how he canceled the wedding. "That woman," he said, pointing to Emily, "did not love me. She saw me as a means to get to my father, as a key to access his money. And when I realized, my world collapsed, because I did love her, or I loved the person I thought she was." Emily sobbed in her seat. Her lawyers tried to console her, but no one in that room believed her. The defense tried to argue that everything was a misunderstanding, that the conversations were taken out of context, that Linda's previous divorces had been legitimate, that the lawsuits against Emily were exaggerated, but the evidence was overwhelming. The bank documents, the testimonies, the offshore transfers, the forged documents. Everything pointed to the same thing. They were guilty. The trial lasted 6 weeks, and finally the verdict arrived. The room was full. Press, victims, family members, curious onlookers, all waiting to hear the judge's decision. Michael and I were sitting in the first row. He held my hand tightly. I felt how he trembled. The judge entered. Everyone stood up. Then he indicated for us to sit. After reviewing all the evidence presented, he began with a solemn voice. "This court finds Emily guilty of fraud, forgery of documents, money laundering, tax evasion, and attempted murder. The sentence is 18 years in prison without the possibility of parole." Emily collapsed. She screamed. Her lawyers tried to calm her, but it was useless. The judge continued. "Linda is declared guilty of the same charges in addition to leading a criminal organization. The sentence is 22 years in prison." Linda did not move. She did not scream. She just looked straight ahead with that empty expression of someone who knows everything is over. The room erupted in murmurs. Journalists ran to their phones. Victims hugged their families. Some cried with relief. Michael let go of my hand, stood up, and left the room without saying a word. I followed him outside. I found him leaning against a column of the courthouse, breathing heavily. "It is over," I said. "Yes." "And now what?" Now, I do not know." I hugged him. My son, my only son, who had fought like a warrior, but who now looked like a broken man. "Let's go home," I told him. "We already did what we had to do. Now it is time to heal." Michael nodded, but in his eyes I saw something that worried me. I saw that although we had won the legal battle, he had lost something in the process, something he might never recover, and I did not know how to help him find it again. The months that followed the trial were the strangest of my life. We had won. Emily and Linda were in prison. Justice had prevailed. The media called us heroes. The victims thanked us. The prosecutor's office recognized us publicly for our collaboration. Everything seemed perfect, but it wasn't. Michael was not the same, and neither was I. My son locked himself away. He stopped going to the office regularly. He delegated most of his projects to his partners. He spent entire days in his apartment without going out. When I called him, he answered with monosyllables. When I visited him, I found him sitting in his living room, looking into the void with the television off and the curtains closed. "Son, you need to talk to someone," I told him one afternoon after finding him in the same place where I had seen him 3 days before wearing the same clothes. "I am fine." "You're not fine. You have been like this for weeks." "I just need time." "Time has passed, and every day you are worse." He got up from the armchair with slow movements. "What do you want me to do?" Dad jump for joy. "Celebrate that we put 2 women in jail." "No, but I do not want to watch you destroy yourself either." "I'm not destroying myself. I'm just processing." "You have been processing for months, and you are not moving forward." Michael turned to me with an expression I had never seen. There was pain, rage, but also something deeper, something that looked like guilt. "Do you know what is the worst part of all this?" he said with a hoarse voice. "That I won, that I destroyed them like I promised, that I got justice. But I do not feel better. I feel worse. Because at the end of the day, I loved that woman. And even though it was a lie, even though everything was fake, my feelings were real. And now I have to live with the fact that the person I loved never existed." His voice broke, and for the first time in months, I saw my son cry. I approached and hugged him. I hugged him like when he was a child and fell off his bike, like when he lost his first soccer game, like when Grace died and we both held each other so as not to collapse. "I know, son," I whispered. "I know." We cried together in that silent apartment, with the weight of everything we had lived falling on us like an avalanche that we had been holding back for months. After that day, something changed. Michael accepted that he needed help. He started therapy with a psychologist specializing in emotional trauma twice a week. At first, he was reluctant, but little by little, he started to open up to talk, to process in a healthy way what he had lived. I also started therapy, because although I had been focused on protecting my son, I also carried my own weight. The trauma of the envelope with the bomb, the sleepless nights, the constant paranoia that someone was watching us. All that did not disappear just because the trial had ended. The psychologist explained something to me that made sense. "Arthur, you were in survival mode for almost a year. Your brain was constantly on alert, pumping adrenaline, preparing for danger. Now that the danger ended, your nervous system does not know how to relax. That is called post-traumatic stress. How is it cured? It is not cured overnight, but it can be managed. With therapy, with relaxation techniques, with patience. Patience, that word that had cost me so much to understand all my life. I started doing yoga. Yes, me, Arthur, 62-year-old businessman, doing impossible poses on a purple mat in my living room. At first I felt ridiculous, but it worked. It helped me breathe, to center myself, to be present. I also started walking. Every morning before breakfast, I went out to walk around my neighborhood for an hour, without rushing, without a destination. Just walking, observing, breathing the fresh air, greeting the neighbors, rediscovering the simple life I had forgotten during the madness of the last months. And little by little, the nightmare began to let me go. But the real change came 6 months after the trial, when Michael came to my house with a proposal. "Dad, I need to do something." "What kind of thing?" "I need to help other men who are going through the same thing I went through." I sat in the armchair, intrigued. "How?" "I want to create a foundation, an organization that helps victims of marital fraud, that gives them free legal advice, psychological support resources to rebuild their lives." I stayed quiet, processing what I had just heard. "What do you think?" asked Michael. "I think it is an extraordinary idea, really. But it is going to require a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of money." "I know. That is why I need your help." I smiled. It was the first time in months I saw my son with that spark in his eyes, that determination. But this time it was not revenge. It was purpose. "Count me in," I said. And so the New Beginnings Foundation was born. We registered it as a non-profit. We hired specialized lawyers, psychologists, social workers. We rented a small office and started spreading the information. At first the calls were few, 3 or 4 a week. Men who had seen the news of the trial and dared to contact us. Men who told us similar stories. Manipulation, fraud, loss of assets, social shame. But over time, the calls increased. We started receiving 10 calls a week, then 20, then 50. Men from all over the country, of different ages, of different socioeconomic levels, all with a story of pain, all needing help. Michael got involved fully. He handled cases personally. He listened to their stories, accompanied them to hearings, connected them with the resources they needed. And in that process, he found his own healing. "Dad," he told me one night while we were having dinner at my house, "I think I finally understand why all this happened. Because if it hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't have understood the pain of these people. I wouldn't have known how to help them. My experience, as horrible as it was, gave me empathy. It gave me purpose." I looked at him with pride. My son had found a way to turn his trauma into something positive, into something that helped others. "Your mom would be very proud of you," I said. Michael smiled, a genuine smile, one of those I hadn't seen in a long time. "I know." But not everything was rosy, because 8 months after the trial, we received news that hit us like a bucket of cold water. Emily's lawyer contacted us. He wanted a meeting, urgent. We met in a neutral coffee shop. The lawyer was a man of about 50 in a gray suit with a tired face. He arrived alone. "Thank you for coming," he said as he sat down. "What is this about?" asked Michael with a cold tone. "Emily wants to talk to you." "No," Michael said. "Please," I said. "No, I have nothing to talk about with that woman." The lawyer sighed. "I understand your position, but you need to hear what I have to say. Emily is very sick." My stomach froze. "Sick?" "She has cancer, late stage. The doctors give her between 6 months and a year to live." Michael stood paralyzed. So did I. "She is receiving treatment in the prison infirmary," continued the lawyer, "but her condition is delicate. And she wants to see you before dying." "What for?" asked Michael with a trembling voice. "To apologize. To explain things. I do not know exactly what. She just asked me to contact you." Michael stood up from the table. "I am not going." "Michael," I said, "no. That woman tried to destroy me. She tried to kill my father. I owe her nothing." The lawyer nodded with understanding. "I understand. But think about it. Because when she dies, there will no longer be an opportunity to have that conversation. And maybe in the future you will regret not having listened to her." Michael left the coffee shop without saying more. I paid the bill and followed him outside. I found him walking fast down the sidewalk, with his hands in his pockets and his jaw clenched. Son, wait. I do not want to talk about this. Michael, stop. He stopped. He turned to me with red eyes. Do not tell me I should go see her. I'm not going to tell you what to do. That is your decision. But I am going to tell you to think well before deciding. Think what? That maybe I owe her something. That maybe she deserves my compassion. No, but maybe you deserve to close that chapter of your life the right way? Michael covered his face with his hands. I do not know if I can see her dad. I do not know if I can be in the same room with her without feeling like I am betraying myself. Then do not go, but if you decide to go, do it for you, not for her. Michael did not answer. He just stood there, standing in the middle of the sidewalk, processing everything. That night, I did not sleep thinking about Emily, about everything she had done, about all the damage she had caused, but also thinking about the fact that she was a human being who was dying, and that regardless of her crimes, that was a tragedy. 3 days later, Michael made his decision. I'm going to go see her. Are you sure? No. But I need to do it. I need to hear what she has to say, and I need to tell her what I have to say. We coordinated the visit with Emily's lawyer and the prison authorities. They gave us an hour in a private room with surveillance, but without interruptions. The day of the visit arrived. Michael was nervous. Me too, although I was not going to enter. I insisted on accompanying him to the prison entrance. Do you want me to go in with you? I asked him. No, I have to do this alone. I hugged him. I will be out here waiting for you. Michael went in. I stayed in the parking lot, sitting in my car, waiting. Each minute felt like an eternity. An hour later, Michael came out. He was pale, walking slowly, but there was something different in his expression, something lighter. He got in the car and stayed quiet for several minutes. How did it go? I asked, finally. It was strange. What did she tell you? Michael breathed deeply. She asked for forgiveness. She told me she understood if I couldn't forgive her, that she didn't expect my forgiveness. But she needed me to know that despite everything, there were real moments between us. Moments where she really felt something for me. Did you believe her? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. But honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. And what did you tell her? I told her the truth, that she had destroyed me, that she had stolen my ability to trust people, that because of her I had been through hell. But I also told her I forgave her. I was surprised to hear that. You forgave her? Yes. Not for her, but for me. Because carrying that resentment was killing me inside, and I needed to let it go. Michael turned to me. He had tears in his eyes, but he was smiling. I feel free, Dad. For the first time in a long time, I feel free. I hugged him, and in that hug I felt that my son had finally closed that chapter, that he could finally start living again. Emily died 4 months later. We did not attend the funeral, but Michael sent flowers with a card that simply said, "Rest in peace." Linda served her full sentence 22 years. When she got out of prison, she was an old woman, sick and alone. No one from her family received her. None of her ex-husbands spoke to her. She died 2 years later in a public nursing home. Alone, forgotten. Justice had taken its course. Today, 6 years after all, that life is different. Better, calmer. The New Beginnings Foundation continues operating. Now we have 3 offices in different states. We have helped more than 200 men recover their lives, get out of fraud, rebuild themselves. And every story we hear reminds us why we do this. Michael got married 2 years ago to a wonderful woman named Patricia. She is a doctor, works in a public hospital. She is honest, hardworking, unpretentious. He met her at a conference on mental health and trauma. They fell in love slowly, with patience, with sincerity. The wedding was small, intimate, only close family and true friends. Nothing ostentatious, nothing fake, all genuine. When Michael asked me to walk him to the altar, I cried. not from sadness, but from pride, because my son had survived a storm that would have destroyed anyone, and he had come out stronger on the other side. Patricia and Michael gave me a grandson 8 months ago. His name is Gabriel. He is a beautiful baby with his dad's eyes and his mom's smile. Every time I hold him, I feel that life makes sense, that everything we went through was worth it because it brought us here. I still live in the same house in the suburbs, but now it is full of life. On Sundays, Michael, Patricia, and Gabriel come to eat. We cook together, we laugh, we tell stories. We watch Gabriel crawl around the living room and put everything in his mouth. And when I see them there in my living room being a happy family, I think about everything we had to go through to reach this moment. I think about Emily, about Linda, about the threats, the trial, the pain. And I realize that all that, as horrible as it was, taught us something fundamental. That money is worth nothing if you have no one to share it with. That true family is not defined by blood, but by loyalty. And that a man's dignity is not in what he has, but in how he gets up after falling. Now I want to share something with everyone listening to this story, especially with older adults, with parents, with grandparents, with anyone who has assets and family. Listen well, because this can save your life. First, never share financial information with anyone who is not absolutely trustworthy. And by absolutely, I mean someone who has demonstrated for years, not months, that they deserve that trust. The people who only ask about money, properties, inheritances, and policies are not interested in you. They are interested in what you have. Second, if someone comes into your life and quickly wants access to your accounts, your documents, your properties, run. Run as fast as you can. Because that person is not a partner, they are a predator. Third, do not be afraid to investigate. If something does not add up, if something generates mistrust, investigate. Hire professionals, ask for references, check backgrounds. It is better to seem paranoid than to end up scammed. Fourth, if your children are in a relationship that you consider dangerous, speak up. Yes, they may get upset. Yes, they may accuse you of being meddlesome. But an angry son is better than a destroyed son. Speak with love, with evidence, with patience, but speak. Fifth, if you are victims of fraud, report it. I know it is scary. I know it is shameful. I know you feel that no one will believe you. But report it, because if you do not do it, those people will continue destroying lives, and you have the power to stop them. And finally, the most important thing, forgive. Not for the other person, but for you. Because resentment is a poison we drink, expecting the other person to die. Forgive to free yourselves, to be able to move forward, to be able to live in peace. I forgave. Michael forgave. And that was the most liberating decision we made in this entire process. Does it mean we forget? No. We will never forget what happened. But we no longer let that define who we are. Today, I am Arthur. I am 68 years old. I am a father, a grandfather, founder of an organization that helps others. And I am a survivor, not a victim, a survivor. And if you are going through something similar, I want you to know this. You are going to survive. It is going to hurt. It is going to be difficult. There will be nights where you think you cannot take it anymore. But you will survive, because you are stronger than you think. And on the other side of that storm, there is life. There is peace. There is purpose. You just have to keep walking one step at a time. A few weeks ago, Michael and I went to visit Grace's grave. We brought fresh flowers. We told her everything that had happened. We introduced her to Gabriel, although I know she already knows him from wherever she is. And while we were there in front of her tombstone, Michael told me something I will never forget. Mom is watching over us, right? Always, I replied, because I feel she guided us through all this, that she protected us, that she gave us the strength to keep going. I had to wipe my tears. I feel the same. We stayed there a while longer in silence, remembering, thanking, and when we left, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt peace. Life had given us the hardest blows we could imagine, but it had also given us the opportunity to become better men, better people. And at the end of the day, that is what matters. Not how much money you have, not how many properties, not how much success, but what kind of person you are when everything collapses, and what you do to get up. We chose to get up with dignity, with honor, with love, and that decision made all the difference. So if you are listening to this story and you are going through something similar, remember this: you are not alone. There is help. There is hope. There is a way back to the light. You just have to take the first step, and we will be here to walk with you. Because that is what true families do. Not those of blood, but those of the heart. They walk together. They cry together. They get up together. And when they finally reach the other side of the storm, they celebrate together. That is my story. That is our story. And if it helps a single person open their eyes, protect themselves, save themselves, then everything we went through will have been worth it. Take care, protect yourselves, and never, never lose hope. Because life always has a way of surprising us, sometimes with tragedies, but also with miracles. And we chose to keep the miracle.